What if I told you that the reason your life feels stuck isn't bad luck? Not other people, not your circumstances. It's because you keep choosing comfort over courage. Be honest. How many times have you delayed what matters most because it was inconvenient, uncomfortable, or unfamiliar? How many times have you whispered not yet when you should have shouted now? That hesitation, it eats away at your potential from the inside. The Stoics called it resistance, the quiet, silent enemy. Yet here we are, still postponing our becoming, still convincing ourselves that tomorrow will save us from facing today's truth. But you know the truth? Tomorrow's a lie. It buries the person you were meant to be. If something inside you feels shaken, lean into it. Consider subscribing as a quiet act of rebellion, a promise to yourself that you refuse to sleepwalk through life, that you're ready to think, grow, and live deliberately. Time doesn't run out all at once. It slips quietly, lost in moments when you say, later, in promises you never keep to yourself. In invisible seconds traded for nothing. We trick ourselves into thinking the future is a patient field, waiting for us. But it's not. The future is only a shadow. Every time you delay action, every time you wait for the perfect moment, you hand a piece of your life to that shadow. Seneca once said, "Fools are always preparing to live." And that sting hits when you see how many dreams sit on the shelf. Not because they were impossible, but because you never made them urgent. You didn't say no, you just didn't say yes. Not yet, not now, maybe someday. But someday isn't a plan, it's an illusion. Deep down, we all wait for conditions to improve, for fear to fade, for motivation to arrive. But they never come together perfectly. They never will. The Stoics understood this. Life doesn't pause for your convenience. Life doesn't hand you clarity before action. It demands that you act anyway. Move first, act while unsure, and leap even when your hands are shaking, because chaos isn't a distraction from your path, it is the path. You don't find peace by removing disorder. You find it by standing upright in the middle of it. Deciding who you are going to be while waiting for life to calm down is like waiting for the ocean to stop moving. Before you swim, you've already missed moments that mattered. You've already buried parts of yourself under layers of hesitation. But what matters is what you do now. Not in next week, not next year, but now. Because if you keep living like time is on your side, you'll blink and realize it never was. All the things you were getting ready for, they become regrets. The chapters you never wrote, the words you never spoke, the changes you never made. They'll visit you in quiet moments, not to punish you, but to remind you that you were capable, that it was always possible. You just didn't begin. Urgency isn't panic, it's presence. It's the ability to see that this moment, this ordinary second, is charged with opportunity. Marcus Aurelius woke up every day and reminded himself that life is brief, not because he was obsessed with death, but because he was obsessed with meaning. He knew that if you treat time like it's unlimited, you'll waste it like it's worthless. So he chose to live with intensity, with direction, not rushing, but not sleeping through his own life either. He wrote, "You could leave life right now. Let that determine what you do and say and think." That's not dark, that's clarity. That's a compass pointing you away from delay and toward presence. And it's not just about big goals. It's about the little choices. The call you've been meaning to make, the project you've been avoiding, the truth you've been withholding. Those things are waiting on you. Not your schedule, not your circumstances. You are capable of more than you think. Once you stop negotiating with your fear and start respecting your time, because every excuse is just fear dressed up as logic, and once you see through it, you can't unsee it. You realize that most of your waiting is just avoidance. Most of your hesitation is just protection, keeping you from failure, from rejection, from discomfort. But those are the very things that sculpt you. Epictetus once said, "How long are you going to wait before you demand the best of yourself?" That question isn't a critique, it's an invitation, a line in the sand. Because this isn't about being perfect. It's about being honest. Honest about how long you've been making promises to yourself you never intended to keep. Honest about how long you've been rehearsing for a life you never actually step into. Honest about how much time you think you have, and how much you're truly willing to waste. No one can answer that for you. No one can force urgency into your soul. But once it hits you, once you understand that this is it, that this is all there is, it changes everything. You stop delaying, you start living. Carl Jung once said, "You are what you do, not what you say you'll do." And that's the hardest truth, because it means you're not your intentions. You are not your plans, your dreams, or your potential. You are only what you choose to act on. Everything else? It's just noise. That's why the lie of later is so dangerous. It gives the illusion of motion while you remain standing still. It tricks your mind into believing that progress is being made, even as you lose days to the fog of indecision. But when you break free from that illusion, when you stop delaying to live, you discover something powerful: momentum. Momentum makes change possible. It breaks inertia. It opens doors you never knew existed. But you only get it by starting right now, exactly where you are. No more waiting for more time, more energy, or more certainty. Plato once warned that the greatest mistake in life is believing you have time, and yet we all believe it, until it runs out. So ask yourself honestly, what are you waiting for? What exactly are you hoping will arrive before you finally give yourself permission to begin? Because nothing's coming. There's no perfect sign, no final confirmation. Just this moment, just this breath, just this choice, and it's more than enough to start. There's something inside you that convinces you to pause when you should move. It doesn't shout, it doesn't argue. It just waits for the right moment to whisper later. And because it's quiet, because it sounds rational, you believe it. You mistake it for self-care. You think it's caution, strategy, thoughtfulness. But it's not. It's resistance. And resistance isn't trying to help you. It's trying to delay you, slowly, silently. It doesn't need a grand moment to defeat you. All it needs is to convince you to wait a little longer, to let this hour pass untouched, to let one more day drift by without action. And eventually, it wins. Not by overpowering you, but by making you forget how powerful you truly are. This force doesn't show up with flashing signs. It disguises itself as logic. It says, "You're not ready. There's still more to learn. Let's just think this through a bit longer." And so you sit, you prepare, you make plans you never act on, you build routines you don't follow. And the truth, it's easier that way. It's easier to sit in the comfort of preparation than to face what's real. The discomfort of becoming is real, but preparation without movement becomes paralysis. You keep circling the idea of change. And with every circle, you dig a deeper hole, one that feels harder and harder to climb out of. Marcus Aurelius wasn't immune to this either. He wrote, "You could be good today, but you choose tomorrow." That sentence doesn't carry judgment. It carries clarity. He knew what it felt like to wake up and be tempted by the warmth of inaction, to wrestle with that inner voice that whispers, "Wait." But he also knew this. Resistance loses its grip the moment you act. Even a small step weakens it. A single decision in your favor becomes a spark that pushes the fog back. And that spark is always within reach. If you stop negotiating with the voice that wants you to stay still, the longer you let resistance call the shots, the heavier everything becomes. Your thoughts start to feel like weights. Simple tasks begin to feel impossible. You lose trust in your own word, not because you're incapable, but because you've made silence a habit. The good news? The way back is always the same. It's not a breakthrough. It's not inspiration. It's action. Even messy, awkward, incomplete action. Hell, action has the power to shift your entire state. The second you move, the second you begin, the fog starts to lift. Resistance loses oxygen because it cannot survive in movement. It only thrives in stillness. You have to stop thinking resistance will go away on its own. It doesn't. It doesn't dissolve with time. It hardens. It finds new disguises. It adapts. And the more you feed it with delay, the more control it takes. But when you move, when you do the thing anyway, even with doubt in your bones, you remind yourself who's in charge. That's how you build discipline. Not by waiting for the mood to change, but by acting despite it. You learn to say, I hear you, to that whisper, but I'm not listening today. Carl Jung understood this deeply. He said, what you resist not only persists but will grow in size when you keep running from effort, from discomfort, from uncertainty. It doesn't just stay there. It multiplies. That's why small decisions matter so much. You think skipping one thing doesn't count. You think hitting snooze once, canceling once, breaking your word just once won't have consequences. But resistance feeds on just once. It uses that single slip as proof that it can creep in again tomorrow. That's why the fight is always now, not in some dramatic showdown, but in the tiny, quiet moments where you choose to show up instead of sitting out. The hardest part of breaking resistance? It feels like you have to be perfect, but you don't. You just have to begin. The pressure to do it right is another disguise. Resistance's favorite trick to keep you from doing it at all. It whispers, if it's not perfect, it's not worth doing. If you're not 100% confident, it's better to wait. And that lie keeps more people stuck than failure ever could. Because failure, at least, comes from effort. Perfectionism, that's just elegant avoidance. You won't feel ready most of the time. You won't even feel motivated. But you don't need readiness to begin. You need movement. The feeling of progress will always follow action, not the other way around. That's what the Stoics trained for. They didn't expect to feel invincible. They expected resistance. And they moved anyway. They taught themselves to recognize that inner voice, not as truth, but as noise. And the moment you see resistance clearly, you stop giving it so much power. Epictetus once said, first say to yourself what you would be, and then do what you have to do. It sounds simple, and it is, but it's not easy. You could know what kind of person you want to be for years, and never take the first step. Because resistance doesn't attack your vision. It attacks your ability to follow through. It tells you stories about how hard it will be, how unworthy you are, how others are already ahead of you. But when you act, you don't just break those stories, you write new ones. So the question isn't whether resistance is there. It always will be. The question is, are you willing to act before it wins again? Because once you begin, even with trembling hands, even with a racing mind, you are no longer the one being pulled. You are the one pulling forward. And from there, everything begins to change. There's a strange kind of pressure we put on ourselves. The need to comment, to judge, to declare how we feel about every little thing that crosses our path. It's subtle but constant. Someone says something rude, and we immediately label it as disrespect. Something doesn't go our way, and we call it unfair. We see a person succeed, and we instantly form a thought about whether they deserve it. This inner commentary is relentless, and it's not just noise, it's weight. Every opinion you form adds to it. Every judgment you make adds something extra for your mind to carry. And over time, all those layers become exhausting. What if you didn't need to carry all that? Marcus Aurelius offered something radical in its simplicity. You always have the power to have no opinion. Not because the world doesn't matter, not because nothing is important, but because peace begins when you stop reacting to everything. It's not a denial of truth, it's an act of strength. It's the ability to stand in the middle of life's chaos without being yanked around by every stimulus. You see something, you hear something, you feel the tug, but instead of immediately assigning meaning, you pause, you breathe, you let it pass, and in that pause, you reclaim control. It's a discipline, and like all disciplines, it's uncomfortable at first. You'll feel the reflex rising inside you, especially when something feels personal. Someone cuts you off, a friend disappoints you, a stranger online says something ignorant. Your chest tightens, your mind races to make sense of it. But what if, just for a moment, you let it be? No narrative, no label, just a thing that happened. Not every comment requires a response. Not every emotion needs to become a belief. Not everything unpleasant needs to become a problem to solve. Most of your emotional exhaustion comes from this. When you start seeing reality without the fog of judgment, you start thinking clearly. You don't have to become cold to become still. This isn't about detaching from life or pretending nothing matters. It's about engaging without clinging, observing without drowning, responding without overreacting. There's a softness to this kind of strength, a quiet confidence that doesn't need to correct everything or prove a point, that doesn't need to be seen reacting to feel real. This strength says, I don't need to have an opinion to have value. I don't need to add noise to feel alive. And when you start practicing this, truly practicing it, you begin to notice something else. Your energy returns. The fatigue that used to sit heavy in your chest starts to fade because you're no longer spending mental currency on things that never mattered. You're not replaying conversations in your head, rewriting outcomes, anticipating judgments. You're just here, fully in the moment, fully yourself. And that is a rare kind of freedom. Epictetus reminds us, it's not things that upset us, but our opinions about things. And this truth, though ancient, feels painfully modern. Scroll through your feed and you'll see people drowning in opinions. Everyone has something to say. Everyone has something to say about everything all the time. And the louder it gets, the harder it becomes to hear yourself think. But the Stoics didn't live like that. They didn't chase outrage. They didn't perform righteousness. They chose silence where others chose noise. And that silence wasn't empty. It was spacious. It gave them room to breathe, to reflect, to choose their next move wisely. You can do that too. You can build that kind of space into your life. The next time you feel the urge to react, to speak, to judge, pause. Ask yourself, is this opinion necessary? Will it bring peace or just more noise? And if it's just noise, let it go. Not because you're avoiding conflict, but because you've decided your inner peace is worth more than being right, that your focus is more valuable than winning every debate, that your time is better spent building something real than tearing apart something temporary. Seneca once said, "He who suffers before it is necessary suffers more than is necessary." When you carry unnecessary opinions, you suffer before life even gives you a reason to. You anticipate problems. You create tension that never needed to exist. And you rob yourself of the stillness that would have helped you navigate it all. But you can change that. You can take back your mind by refusing to let it be pulled in every direction. Let people talk. Let them be wrong. Let situations unfold without your interpretation stamped all over them. That's not weakness. That's mastery. To remain calm in the presence of noise. To remain kind in the presence of cruelty. To remain clear in the presence of chaos. That's what Stoicism offers. Not escape, but endurance. Not detachment, but discernment. Socrates believed that the unexamined life is not worth living. But there's a difference between examining life and overthinking it to death. One creates clarity, the other creates confusion. And sometimes clarity comes not from thinking more, but from thinking less. From choosing silence over commentary, stillness over reaction, presence over analysis. You're allowed to sit with something without rushing to name it. You're allowed to feel something without turning it into a story. You're allowed to let the world be what it is, without twisting yourself trying to control it. And when you begin to live like that, when you stop giving your opinions the final word, you might just hear something else underneath the noise. Your own peace, finally breathing again. There's a silence that follows grief, one that no words can truly fill. It doesn't announce itself with drama or clarity. It just arrives quietly, and it stays. Some days it feels like a weight pressing on your chest. Other days like an emptiness behind your eyes. You move, you speak, you laugh, even, but something within, you have been fundamentally rearranged. And the world doesn't pause for you. It keeps spinning, as if it didn't just lose someone irreplaceable. But you feel that absence in every ordinary moment. And in that stillness, in that ache, you start to see things differently. The Stoics believed grief wasn't something to escape. It was something to honor, not by drowning in it, but by using it. They didn't hide from death. They didn't paint it as tragedy. They understood it as nature, as structure, as part of the deal. Marcus Aurelius reminded himself daily that everyone he loved would die, not because he was morbid, but because he wanted to love them fiercely while they were still here. To remember what mattered, before time made it impossible to go back. Death was the teacher, and grief was its messenger. So if you've lost someone and it cracks something inside you, that's not brokenness. That's an opening, a space where memory and meaning can grow. And you don't heal by sealing it shut. You heal by letting it breathe. You heal by transforming that pain into presence. Every act of kindness you do in their name keeps them alive in the only way that really counts. Not as an idea, but as an influence, as a living force flowing through your voice, your choices, your character. You don't have to get over it. The idea that closure means forgetting is shallow and false. You carry them, you continue them, you give them shape in the way you live. If they were patient, be patient. If they were honest, speak with that same clarity. If they were strong in quiet ways, let your silence be strong too. Because you aren't meant to stay the same after loss. You're meant to become something more. Grief doesn't just strip things away. It offers something too. A depth, a sharpness, a reminder that none of this is forever. And that is what makes it beautiful. Carl Jung said, "Only the wounded physician heals." And maybe that's what grief really does. It wounds you, yes, but it also makes you capable of healing others in a way you never could before. You start to see pain in other people's eyes differently. You become slower to judge, quicker to forgive, more present in conversations that used to feel small. And when someone tells you they're hurting, you listen without fixing, because now you understand some things aren't meant to be fixed. They're meant to be carried. And some days the sadness will sneak back in. A sound, a smell, a memory. And that's okay. That's not weakness returning. It's love resurfacing. It's the soul dot reminding you that what you lost still matters. That it's still shaping you. That it's still here in the ways that truly count. The Stoics didn't cry out against loss. They leaned into it. They allowed it to humble them, to strip away what was unnecessary, and to point them back to what was essential. Seneca said, "He who fears death will never do anything worth of a man who is alive." He understood that fear of loss makes us timid, but acceptance of it makes us courageous. When you know that everything can be taken, you start holding everything differently. You stop clinging to perfection. You stop wasting time pretending you have forever. You start pouring yourself into the things that outlast the body. Honor, presence, character, love. Let grief be your guide, not your jailer. Let it take your hand and lead you deeper into life, not further away from it. Let it make you more alive, not less. Because the pain you feel isn't just about death, it's about meaning. It's a sign that something mattered deeply. That depth doesn't disappear. It gets reshaped. It gets repurposed. And when you allow that process, you become something stronger, not harder, not colder, but more capable of love that doesn't depend on guarantees. Epictetus said, "Never say of anything, 'I have lost it,' but only 'I have given it back.'" There's wisdom in that, a kind of sacred humility. You don't own anyone, not their time, not their presence. You're given the privilege of knowing them, walking beside them, learning from them. And when they're gone, you don't lose that. You return it to the world. You take what they gave you and you give it again through your words, your choices, your love. It's not easy. Nothing worth living for is. But every time you choose to let your love turn into action instead of sorrow, you keep their light burning. And it's not about being cheerful. It's not about pretending you're okay. It's about honoring the gift of their life by refusing to numb yourself to your own. It's about living in such a way that if they could see you now, they would recognize themselves in what you've become. Plato believed that the soul is immortal, that it transcends the body. But even if you don't hold that belief, there's a kind of immortality in memory, in values, in transformation. When you allow their influence to guide your life, they don't disappear. They evolve through you. That's not fantasy. That's responsibility. That's what grief asks of us. not to move on, but to move forward, carrying what cannot be replaced. And as you walk, remember this. You're not alone in the ache. Every person you pass has lost someone. Every quiet stare on a bus, every distracted face in a cafe, every tired soul behind a counter. They're all carrying something too. And sometimes your story will help them find words for theirs. Sometimes your healing will give them permission to begin their own. When used well, grief is not a burden. It's a kind of compass, one that points not to despair, but to depth. One that doesn't erase the pain, but transforms it into something useful, something sacred. So if you've lost someone, don't let that loss shrink you. Let it shape you. Let it stretch your capacity for love, for presence, for courage. And know that in doing so, you're keeping them alive. Not in memory alone, but in movement, in the choices you make, in the life you build. There's a moment each morning that feels small, but isn't. It's that space between sleep and decision, between rolling over and rising up. And what you do with that moment tells you everything you need to know about who's in control. The part of you that wants comfort, or the part of you that wants to grow. On some days, getting up feels easy. On others, it feels like dragging 1,000 pounds of doubt behind you. But the truth is, your progress will never depend on how you feel. It will depend on what you choose. The Stoics didn't sit around waiting for inspiration to arrive like a divine visitor. They acted, they moved, and they trained themselves to rely on effort, not emotion. Waiting for motivation is one of the most dangerous habits we've normalized. It convinces you that effort must be earned by feeling ready. But readiness is unreliable. It's inconsistent. And when your life is built around the moments when you happen to feel inspired, you surrender all your power to chance. That's not strength. That's slavery to your moods. The Stoics lived in a time of chaos, loss, violence, and political betrayal. Yet they found a way to act with consistency and calm. They weren't superhuman. They were simply committed to something more permanent than mood. Principle. You don't have to feel powerful to act powerfully. In fact, most days you won't. You'll feel tired, frustrated, uncertain. But every time you choose movement in the face of that, you redefine yourself. You create a track record of decisions that prove you are not at the mercy of how you feel. And that kind of proof builds something stronger than inspiration ever could. Trust. You begin to trust your own word, your own rhythm. You stop needing to feel amazing to do something meaningful. And that shift is everything. Sometimes the smallest movement breaks the biggest spell. A walk around the block, 5 deep breaths, standing up when you want to lie down. These things don't look like much, but they are statements, declarations of who's in charge. And when you choose to act, especially when it feels pointless, you plant a flag in the ground. You say, I am not waiting anymore. I'm moving now. And in that movement, the fog starts to lift. You remember what it feels like to be your own force. There's dignity in effort, not just in the outcome, but in the choice itself. That's what the Stoics knew. That effort is its own reward. That showing up, no matter how small the step, creates clarity. Action reveals what thinking cannot. You realize the weight you thought was permanent was just inertia. And inertia loses its power the moment you decide to take the first step, even if your legs are shaky, even if your mind protests. Because action isn't just behavior, it's belief. The belief that you're not done, that something inside you still wants to fight. That motion is medicine, not just for the body, but for the soul. Aristotle said, we are what we repeatedly do. Excellence, then, is not an act, but a habit. And habit is formed not through intensity, but through repetition. You don't have to crush it every day. You don't have to set records. You just have to keep showing up. And every time you do, even when it's hard, especially when it's hard, you build a rhythm that doesn't depend on mood. You become reliable to yourself, and that reliability becomes confidence. Not the loud kind, but the quiet kind. The kind that says, I've been here before. I can do this again. There's a voice that will always tell you to rest, to wait, to slow down. And sometimes, yes, rest is wise. Sometimes, stillness is sacred. But not when it's avoidance, not when it's hiding, not when it's wrapped in stories about how you'll get to it later. Later is the fantasy. Now is the fire. The only real change happens when you stop asking how you feel and start asking what matters. What matters is progress. And here's the final truth the Stoics teach. Life doesn't wait. The world doesn't pause. Your time, your energy, your choices, they are yours and they are fleeting. So rise, move, act, choose what matters today. Not tomorrow, not someday, today. And in doing so, you do more than live. You become the person you were always meant to be. Because the fire of your life isn't in the waiting, it's in the doing. And that is how greatness begins.